Welcome back to Sika Strength. Welcome back to Sika Stan. Today we're doing another one of these videos where we answer your questions. And to be honest, this question has probably been answered around 20 or asked around 20 or 30 times in the comments on the live streams and always on the combat sports videos. So this is a very common question we get around BJJ, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and how to train your grip for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, there's a number of elements here. You have no-gi jiu-jitsu, you have jiu-jitsu in the gi, you have the difference between straight arm grip strength and bent arm grip strength, and then you have the difference with the different types of grips you take in jiu-jitsu. So sometimes the grip will be something very simple like a C grip around the wrist or an ankle. Then you have things that are slightly more complex. You might have the actual grip of a lapel, which is a very strong and easy grip to take. And then lastly, you'll have something that would be similar to open palm strength. So people in sports like gymnastics will be very used to thinking about bent arm versus straight arm grip strength, and it's the same with the hand, where the hand is fully closed or the hand is only slightly closed, trying to hold on to something like a shoulder.
So the first place you have to start with grip strength, and it's a thing you can't really get away from when you're looking at grip strength. And if you're looking at this from the wrong end of things, you're going to miss a lot of it. So the first place you have to start with grip strength is to understand to have a very powerful grip, you just have to be generally stronger. You need to be a strong person. Now, you don't have to be 180 kilos, half door or lash style person, but you need to be strong in general. Like, you need to be well trained, you need to be doing strength training, or you need to be doing a lot of movements that require a lot of force production. When it comes to grip strength, a lot of strength is the basis for how good your grip will be. This will be the limiting factor to how much of a potential grip you can have. Now, I know you're going to start talking, some like say, what about rock climbers? They can do fingertip pull-ups and stuff. And that's a very specific style of grip strength. But in reality, it's not going to be the most usable grip strength when it comes to you grabbing someone's lapel and someone grabbing your hands and pulling them off. You need to resist that grip strength. You need to resist their gripping. A lot of times when we're gripping in jiu-jitsu, we're holding someone at the end of that, or we're trying to pull someone through. So it's not just specific to hold their own body weight. This also requires force production alongside our grip strength. So we want to use our strength, and the conduit for that is grip strength. So it's something that can't be overlooked. So always pay attention to, if a lot of this stuff isn't massively improving your grip strength, try and take a look at what are your general strength levels like and how well they are developed. One of the interesting things you'll see in a little bit of sports science is when they're looking at central nervous system fatigue, or if they're looking at how fatigued someone is in general, one of the measurements they'll do is actually a grip strength test. So they have a little meter where you squeeze as much as possible. I'm sure you'll see them. It'll give you pounds per square inch or equivalent reading if you're in Europe, and it'll tell you what level your grip strength is currently at, and they'll use this as a measure across a longitudinal period of time to see how someone is fatigued, and then try and match this up in certain scenarios. And it's generally quite well matched. When your grip strength is decreasing, you'll see levels of fatigue increasing. So it's something, just gives you a little kind of example of how much your grip strength displays the rest of your body's ability. So don't ever forget that, even when you're being super specific.
So what's happening as you're doing your presses, your rows, your pull-ups, your chin-ups, all that training going through your hands? What's actually happening to your hands is kind of two or threefold. So first thing, you're actually, like, your flexors and extensors of your hands are obviously getting stronger, right? The muscles that control the movement in your hand are getting bigger, they're getting stronger, they're getting more coordinated. That's the first place you go to. The second thing you have then is that the actual structure of your hands is changing, right? So if you look at any kind of old farmer, or if you look at any of the rock climbers, they're going to have massive hands. So not only will they be longer than your normal hand, but they'll also be wider around the joint. They'll probably have a lot more meat on them from front to back. And then the individual finger joints are going to be swelled and thicker, right? And that's a combination of a number of things, but it's a general adaptation you'll see in the hand, that the hand becomes or increases its structural integrity. Now, this is going to be very, very important in jiu-jitsu. So Garth explained the situation earlier where somebody might be gripping your lapel and you go to break your lapel. If you have thin, spindly fingers and you're just holding on here and someone immediately rips that away, it's very likely that you'll pop one of those individual carpal joints in the finger. You might break a bone in your hand, you might injure your wrist. And then when you get down further into the wrist and you look at, if you're a blue belt or above and you start wrist locking people, the thicker you can make your wrist and hand, the better it's going to be. Now, these kinds of morphological changes are difficult to bring about. A lot of them are going to be genetically coded for you, and you won't have a massive amount to do with them. But certainly being bigger and stronger in the gym will lead to your hands being bigger and stronger and having more ability to resist that braking force. The third thing then is that your increased work capacity will have a massive influence on your grip strength. So I'm talking about specific work capacity for your grips. A lot of the time when people start training, or if they take a break and come back to train, one of the things you'll commonly hear about is forearm pumps. If you see rock climbers training, or you hear rock climbers talking about their training, they'll talk about forearm pumps. What you're getting there is a build-up in lactic acid in the muscle, so you have a massive amount of anaerobic work happening within the muscle. That build-up of waste products is going to be basically bottleneck and won't be flushed out quite that easily. And that lack of capacity will cause you to lose grips. So if Owen is grabbing onto my arm and trying to armbar me, or he's grabbing a hold around my neck and he is squeezing as tight as he possibly can, if he has more work capacity and he's better able to flush out those waste products, he's better able to replenish ATP within the cells, he's going to be better able to maintain that level of force and eventually better able to win the fight or have better outcomes in his fights.
So when it comes to specific gym training, there's a couple of different things and areas that pitfalls that people will fall into. The first thing I'd actually want to talk about is something that I've changed my mind about recently in the last couple of months, and that is the use of things like your gi or your belts or towels or ropes in addition to your gym specific assistance work. So before, I would have thought it was not really a good return on your investment if you did something like you did all your pull-ups with a towel around the pull-up bar. The problem with this generally is that when people do these things, you're really limiting your capacity to do your number of pull-ups, and it limits your ability to do a meaningful number of pull-ups to progress your upper back strength or your upper body strength. So in these scenarios, people are limited by their grip strength, which is what they're trying to train, but they're also trying to train their upper body strength in relation to whatever it is they're doing. Maybe it's their rows, their dumbbell rows, or their pull-ups, whatever aspect of your grip strength you're using with this kind of additional tool, or something similar to that, maybe fat grips or something. So in these scenarios, I actually think there is value in training that specific grip strength while doing some of your strength training work in the gym. So if you might wrap your belt around the barbell and do landmine rows, or you might do pull-ups with your gi, or you might do pull-ups with a towel hanging over the barbell. Because in these scenarios, grip strength is actually quite specific in certain realms. If you imagine your grip strength, degrees of range of motion and the number of fibers recruited at different points are kind of like when you're squatting to parallel or squatting to full depth. If you squat to parallel with incredibly heavy weight, so if you squat to parallel with 350 kilos, you'll have recruited a large number of muscle fibers, you'll have produced a lot of force, and so the chances of you being able to squat 200 to full depth is quite high, and if you'd never squat at 350 to depth. And that's kind of a crude analogy, but it is quite similar. If you're very, very strong and you do train your grip, you'll have quite a good grip, but you still want to train your grip in specific scenarios. The main thing is when you're in your gym training that you're not compromising your main goal for that particular exercise. So if your back is really weak but your grip strength is okay, or both of these need work, if your grip strength is weak and your back is weak and you're doing your dumbbell rows with fat grips, and you should be able to do rows with 40 kilos or 1.5 times body weight or something like that, or whatever it is, or half body weight or something, not 1.5 times body weight. If you could dumbbell row 1.5 times body weight, that would be very impressive. But if you're doing these things, what you're doing is limiting the rows you're doing, because you might be only do rows with 15 kilos with the fat grip, because you both have a weak back and you have a weak grip, and so you're really limiting your ability to train in the gym. So you have to make a smart analysis. If you're someone who can do 15 to 20 dead hang pull-ups, then you know if you go and do a certain number of sets with your gi or your belt or towel or whatever additional work you're doing with them, you'll know that you are going to maintain your ability to do pull-ups quite well, but then additionally train your grip strength. So you just need to do a little cost analysis, see what the return on investment is in relation to, will I get benefit from doing more grip strength and compromising my gym work slightly, or am I going to be compromising a lot of my gym work, which I need work with? Because remember that overall strength is something that still plays massively into your grip strength. Or will you be in a position where I'm very well rounded, my grip strength is okay now, but it could be better for training specifically, and I'm not really compromising my ability to do these movements by using an additional piece of equipment. So in that scenario, in certain cases, it is quite useful to do them when you are doing your generally pulling motions.
I think the last thing then is that a lot of time when people are rolling against higher belts, people who are more experienced, people who are generally better at jiu-jitsu than they are, a lot of the time it will feel like their grips are a lot better. It might feel like they're tighter. It might feel like they don't burn out as quickly. It might feel like the grip is just in a better place. It's very, very unlikely in that case that that person is massively stronger in the hand than you are. It's unlikely that the fibers of their hand are the difference between their grip and your grip. Most of the time, it's a host of factors. So first thing is they're probably selecting a grip in a better place, right? It might be that it's at the right area of your neck, so they don't have to pull quite so hard, but still close off the circulation. It might also be that they're selecting a grip on a better piece of material. So if it's in the gi and they're grabbing the lapel instead of just an open piece of fabric, it might be that they get a better grip on that particular piece of fabric. If it's in no-gi, they might be grabbing just behind the elbow instead of just generally on the tricep, and they might have a much more solid grip there. The other thing is that it's very unlikely those higher belts, those people who are more experienced, are over-committing. So our coach talks about wanting to be like concrete. So it starts at 10%, then 20%, then 30%, 40%, 50%, and gradually that grip gets tighter. Gradually that concrete becomes more and more solid. And if it's something like a cross-collar choke, you don't just rip into it straight away and burn your grips out. You just gradually start to add more and more tension. And that allows those higher belts and more experienced athletes to make it feel like they have far greater grip strength because they're gripping in a much better fashion. And I think that's a massive thing, is not overcommitting, making sure the skill of the grip is actually correct. And it's definitely something to think about if you find like your grips are burning out a lot.
Probably one quick thing to talk about as well. A lot of times people will immediately go to things like the captain to crush or grippers when it comes to grip strength. And I'll just tell you this from kind of a large anecdotal pool that we've seen, is that this generally doesn't really make a major difference to people's grip strength. We'll see a lot of lifters do this specifically on that side of things, where they won't be able to grip a snatch or a clean or a deadlift incredibly well, and they'll try and use the Captain of Crush grippers or similar manufacturers ones to improve their grip strength. And we really don't see it actually moving that well, because it's probably for a couple of different reasons, but one of them is that it's an active gripping motion where you're trying to move through a full repetition with your grip. The when you're gripping for things like BJJ or barbells, is quite a static grip for a little bit longer, and we don't really see it transfer over that well when people use things like those kind of Captain Across or something. Now there is a couple of other different tools. There's the kind of the ball and chain grip where you grip your fingers, and there's a particular like a collar of a barbell, you can load that up. Those would be quite interesting. And would certainly be useful in certain scenarios. They're not necessary. You can improve your grip massively in other areas without buying them, but those kind of things would work quite well. But when it comes to kind of grippers and Captain to Crush, where you move your hand through range of motion, it doesn't really transfer that well from what we've seen for most people. Generally, I'll see if someone can do those, they're probably quite strong anyway, and they'll probably have a strong grip as it was.
If you want some general strength and conditioning training, if you're a BJJ athlete or a combat athlete in general, go and check out the link below. That will bring you to our 10-week combat athlete program. It's 4 sessions per week, all of your strength work, all of your power work. Starts off with a 6-week strength and hypertrophy block and finishes with a 4-week speed and power block. So it works very, very well for people who are fighting.